Our mother, Violet Mavis Dight nee Hassel, was born in Cooma on the 30th of September 1922, not long after the end of World War I. Now, if she were here with us today, she would probably complain about us calling her Violet. We could never work out why she didn't like the name, but she preferred just Vi, spelled V-I-E. She was the youngest child of Margaret Hassel nee Agnew, known as Pearl, and George Hassel, and one of three siblings, Jack being the eldest, followed by Joyce in the middle. Mum grew up in Cooma and was raised by her mother Margaret, Pearl, and extended family, including her grandmother, just called Gran, and her mother's sister, Auntie May. Life could not have been easy for them in the post-World War period and through the Great Depression of 1929 to 1939. 4 generations and extended family members all lived together in cramped surroundings. Mum's mother Pearl worked several jobs to support her family, including in a bakery, with an absentee father who paid no child support. Mum loved Cooma and her life growing up on the Monero, in spite of the hardships. She spoke fondly of her school years, in particular. She participated in theatre and variety events at high school. She was a house captain and wrote about school events in the Cooma State High School newsletter. She loved her school sports, including hockey and volleyball. Mum would tell stories of travelling to school sporting events in various towns throughout the Monero, including Nimitabel and Jindabyne. She also played tennis, golf, and was an accomplished skier. After leaving school, she worked in the office of a garage, then later as an assistant to the secretary of Cooma Hospital, followed by a job as a dental nurse, which she particularly enjoyed. She was proud of being able to identify and name all the teeth in our mouths as children. During World War II, she worked with groups in her community providing first aid and home nursing to the needy, and most nights after work, she helped in the Cooma Hospital, settling patients for the night. She had pride in the fact that her mother's side of the family were amongst the earliest settlers in the Monero, from the early 1800s, and that her great-grandmother owned the first sewing machine on the Monero, bringing it from wee Jasper on horseback to settle there. On her father's side of the family, she was descended from the Reverend Roland Hassel, who was the first Church of England minister to come to Australia, arriving in the late 1700s. In 1946, she met our father, John Dight from Grafton, who had come to Cooma to rehabilitate after the war and worked for the Commercial Banking Company of Sydney. They were married the following year, and in 1948 they moved to Tumbarumba, where our father continued to work in the local branch of the bank. Mum gave birth to her son Ian in December 1948 in the Tumbarumba Hospital. After 4 years in Tumbarumba, the family moved to Bowraville, where she gave birth to her daughter Helen in May 1952. After Bowraville, it was on to Muswellbrook for 4 years, and then to Sydney in 1957, where the family lived in Alpha Road, Willoughby. During the 1960s and the 1970s, she raised her family, looked after 2 dogs, first Dougal the Scottie and then Christy the Corgi. She adored Christy and the Queen in particular. During these years she worked at Grace Brothers in Chatswood, mostly I expect to provide her children with little extras. She bought herself a car, a Mini, and learned to drive. She did it not so much for herself, but for her children, to also learn to drive, as she was well aware that our father would not let us near his car. She was very thoughtful and generous. Her generosity was also evident in her prolific knitting activity. Her family and their friends grew up in woolen jumpers and outfits that were knitted with great love. After our parents' separation, she moved into her own flat in 1989. It was at about this time that she took up lawn bowls and was a member of the Willoughby Legions Club, where she held a number of formal positions over the years. She loved her bowls, but was forced to give the game away after a series of health issues, including cancer, a new valve in her heart and a pacemaker, and numerous strokes. However, she kept in touch with many of her friends from bowls up until the end of her life, as she did with friends from her days at Grace Brothers. During the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s, she also volunteered regularly at the Royal North Shore Hospital in the flower shop, and has received an appreciation award after 25 years' service. Our mother was an avid reader, and until her eyesight deteriorated in later years, she would have books delivered to her regularly by the local library and devour them all. It was a tremendous disappointment to her when her eyesight deteriorated to the point that she could no longer read books. She loved her birds too, the kookaburras, lorikeets and butcherbirds in particular, although she would complain about how much she had to spend feeding them. Mum made a couple of large overseas trips during this period of her life, to San Francisco and New York in the United States with Helen and a friend Caroline in 1978, and later to Kenya in 1995 to meet her grandson, Pablo Luan, who was born in Nairobi. In her latter years, Mum would lament the passing of her friends, concerned that she would soon have none left. However, near the end of her life, she recognised how lucky she was to still have so many friends that would visit her regularly in the nursing home. She expressed tremendous appreciation for her friends near the end of her life. Now cut the cake.
Look out for that knife. There we go. Stanley.
Well done. Good one, good one. Up he goes.
Well done.
Oh, he's dirty. You're going to kiss a boy.
Our mother was a very kind, strong and resilient woman. She had been through many difficult periods in her life, but her resilience shone through. She loved her children, grandchildren and great-grandchild and their families very much. She will be greatly missed and is survived by her children Ian and Helen, grandchildren Lucian and Pablo Lewin, and great-grandson Tyson. She had a life well lived and now a rest well earned.